Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Tristan Kumar proudly presents Dying Planet, The Prison of the Survivors, narrated by Tristan Kumar, the one and only. Act 3, Mirage. Trigger warning. The following work of fiction contains the articles and themes of blood, death, murder, brief described gore, described injury, brief nightmare imagery, a brief school shooting event, and violence against children. Please listen with care and stop if you feel triggered or provoked at any moment. Thank you. And without any further ado, Part 11. The Party. Life seems to find a path to destruction. Humanity is especially dropping the breadcrumbs for it, a man on a podium said. The silent crowd watched the man in the suit give his speech, ice-cold champagne in hand. Those are the words that brought us here today. We have grown since that time, but even though it has been 1 year since our quincentennial, let us not forget what we are fighting for, he finished as he raised his cup into the air. Everyone did so and they all clapped. He walked off the stage. Thank you, Mr. Robbins, someone said as he walked off. But now, I'd like to introduce our speaker of the night, they said, and everyone listened. Look, bro, you got this. Just get out there and say a few words, eh? My friend comforted me. I don't know if I can do this tonight, I said, nervous. You can do it. I mean, you're one of the most famous 15-year-olds in the world right now. You could definitely do this, he said. I looked at him and nodded. I walked to the side curtain and pulled it out of the way. My pitch-black suit shined on everyone as they saw me walk by. Our speaker for tonight is no other than... Everyone stared at me as I walked up the stairs. The one! I stopped in front of the main curtain. The person next to me gave a thumbs up and left. The only... I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Rye! The announcer yelled, and I pulled open the curtain and walked out. Everyone was clapping and staring at me. I smiled and waved into the crowd. The announcer stepped aside, and I walked onto the podium. I looked at everyone, became confident, and began. Hello, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to the first year's party, I said. Everyone clapped. I was so nervous. Oh, please don't. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight, and I'd like to say that you've given me a lot in this past year, and I've been so grateful. So, at this time, I said, about to reveal the life of the party, our new invention. But then, outside, through the windows of the building, I saw a black limousine pull up. Out stepped a woman in a black dress. She had black hair and walked so elegantly. I started to back away from the podium. I'd like to say thank you and have a great night, I said as they clapped. I walked off stage. What the hell are you doing? You ruined the show. You didn't even introduce, my friend started, but I walked past him. I walked to the woman and eventually found her upstairs and outside the balcony. I walked up to her and she turned to look at me. I couldn't believe who it was. Sylvie? I asked. She nodded. You must be Mr. Rye, then, she said as she shook my hand. I didn't know what to say. Sylvie, I've been interested in your work for so long. You've been on the Inventors Week magazine for the past month. I love your work, I said. Well, thank you. I never knew I had such a big fan, she said. No problem. Well, what I was going to ask you is, do you want a partnership with me? Because I feel like you and we could make a great team with science and engineering if we could, I started. Say no more, she said as she looked at me. We have a deal, she finished as she shook my hand and walked out of the balcony. I smiled, leaned out toward the night sky, and closed my eyes. The prison of the survivors? I asked. Well, that's what I like to call it, General Rogers said. I looked at Sylvie. The party seemed to start to leave and go their separate ways. Come on, let's go see someone and ask if you can stay here for a bit longer, he said. What do you mean by here? Sylvie asked, but he was gone. We waited as everyone left. I was still trying to process where we are, and how they were humans, what was going to happen to us, and many more. Eventually, General Rogers came back to us. Follow me, he said, and we followed him through the hallways of the pristine ship. Each time we came around a rounded hallway, there were rooms on the side with a window on the left. We peeked inside the room, but the door closed just in time for us not to see anything. We continued to walk. Then we started to go upstairs. We walked up the stairs quickly and arrived at a gray wall. Now, you two, listen to me. If you want to stay out for at least one day, then let me do the talking. Only speak when spoken to. Understand? He told us. We nodded in approval. He turned back and took a deep breath in. The doors opened and we walked in. The room was circular. There were 7 chairs at a higher point than where we were. Some people were reclined in the white seats, swiping their hands across the projected screen in front of them. Suddenly, a voice came from behind us. We all turned to look. "Are these the one, Rogers?" the booming voice said. The booming voice came from a towering figure. He was a human, but much larger than the others. He had more muscle and looked like he was military trained. "Yes, Rye and Sylvie," he said. "Why, they look normal to me." "Show proof," they said. General Rogers grabbed our arms and showed us our arms. On it, there were the numbers 576. "When did that get there?" I mouthed to Sylvie. "I don't know," she mouthed back. "Very well then," they said. "The children will have 1 extra day. Rogers, you will accompany them and answer their questions before they send in. Go now," they said. General Rogers nodded at the thing, and he signaled for us to leave. Once the door shut behind us, we were silent. "All right, follow me now, come on," he said, as he took us back down the glistening stairs. We went back down to the circular hallway, but went into one of the rooms after walking around a little. It was a staircase going down. We walked down and arrived at the docking bay. Miniature pods were lined up against the wall. He went into one, and we went in as well. Once all inside, the door slammed behind us. The pod jerked forward, and we started to move through space. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. The darkness of space was so dark and beautiful. Glistening stars spread across the sky gloriously. I looked in awe, and once I was done, I looked forward. I was in utter shock and surprise. "What? How?" I said. Our pod was heading towards a planet no other than Earth itself. "Well, in the physical world," General Rogers said, "Earth never blew up. There was no event that caused the sun to explode. It's all still here," he explained. I was amazed as we entered the atmosphere. The outer layer seemed like it started to burn. "Will this pod hold?" Sylvie asked General Rogers loudly over the sound. "We've done this 1,000,000 times. Of course it'll hold," General Rogers assured. We descended all the way and then found ourselves flying through the clouds. I smiled, finally back to Earth. Once the clouds cleared, I saw the blueness of the sky for the first time in the past deadly days. I looked around. We started to slow down. I could suddenly see skyscrapers, and we finally landed. The door creaked open and mist seeped through the crack. I could smell the finest thing of my life. Fresh oxygen. Not polluted, but fresh. The door flung open, and we stepped out. "Welcome," General Rogers said, smiling, "to Earth." Sylvie and I looked around the area in shock. Mountains filled around us while there was a small but also large city in front of us. Where are we?" Sylvie asked in astonishment. "Well, we're on Earth, but more specifically we're in Xander's Land, or even more specifically, Las Vegas, Nevada," General Rogers explained. "What's Xander's Land?" I asked. "Well," General Rogers started to walk forward onto the fluffy grass as we followed. "Xander and Chris were the founders of the main districts of Earth. They were brothers, but one day something happened. So Xander and Chris left each other. Chris went to the outer reaches of the land and built Chris's land, while Xander stayed with his people and made Xander's Land. Both the lands are on different sides of the world, with the Americas and Africa and Europe belonging to Xander, and Asia and Australia belonging to Chris. Everything else was split in between," General Rogers explained. We looked around. Birds were chirping all around, and the ambience of the city was normal. But the one thing that was off was the people. In the streets, in the buildings, in the mountains, nobody. All empty, almost abandoned. We walked from the spacepod and went into the city. There was still nobody there. The streets were empty, but still really surprisingly clean. We went to a specific building and started to go down an elevator. The rickety ride took us all the way down to the last level. I arrived at the floor of my hotel. I was only staying in Las Vegas for a day and had to pack to leave the next day. I left the elevator, walked down the corridor to my hotel room, and opened the door. I took off my jacket and pulled off my tie. I went to my bathroom and turned on the water to heat up. I went back down to my couch and sat down, tired. I started to unbutton my shirt but stopped. I reached over to my right and on the table, I pulled the computer out of a drawer and onto my lap. I opened it and went to my mail. The clock said 11:06 p.m. I was so tired even though it wasn't that late. But once it loaded, I found that I had some emails from my colleague back in Los Angeles, Rodrigo. He was just telling me about the status of our company and all. I reloaded my page and found a new email just then. It was from Sylvie. I opened it and it read, "Hello, Rai. I'd just like to talk to you shortly about our partnership. My equipment is currently in Las Vegas and I cannot move it out. I'm going to stay here for around a month and I cannot go back to Los Angeles with you. This is an email intended to ask you if you would like to stay with me in Las Vegas to continue our partnership. Just let me know by tomorrow. Thanks, Sylvie." I sat for a minute in my thoughts, the only sound coming through being the water from the shower. I clicked reply on the email and thought what to say. I have to say, it was very difficult. This was one of the smartest engineers at her age, like me. I thought about it and decided that I'd like to combine our different minds and make something new. As I put my finger down on my keyboard, there was tension around me. The air seemed to become thicker while the lights seemed to dim. I looked around, but continued. "Sylvie, that would be great. I could rearrange some of the things on my schedule. I have some ideas for things that I've been working on so we can make something. Meet me at the Four Seasons Hotel in room 101 tomorrow at noon. We can talk there. See you tomorrow." I hit send and the pressure on me faded away. Then I got a text from Rodrigo, my associate back in Los Angeles. I looked at it. "Why'd you do it?" it said. "What?" I replied. "No, I'm sorry, Rai. But it's over," he replied. "Bro, please, stop. Just tell me," I said quickly. But when I sent it, it said that the contact was no longer found. I slammed my fist on the couch and threw my phone onto the table angrily. I got in the shower and after a nice hot bath, I came out. I went to the window and looked out at it. I went back to the table and picked it up. I reread the last thing Rodrigo said. I closed my eyes and gently banged my head against the glass. I stepped back, but I was so angry that I punched the glass. "We're here," General Rogers said. We got out of the elevator and looked around. It was a small room but looked cozy and comfortable. He went to the fridge and pulled out a beer. He went back to his couch and sat down. "So," he took a sip. "Any questions y'all like to ask me now?" he said. "Yes," we both said as we sat down on the chairs across from him. "Shoot," he said as he took another sip. "First of all, what did that person mean when they said that we could stay here for an extra day?" I asked. Sylvie nodded, wanting to know too. He sat and looked at us, then took a sip. "Sorry, kids, I can't tell you that," he said. "Classified for newbies," he said. We sighed. "Okay, can I take a walk outside, please?" I asked. He nodded, and Sylvie followed me. "What should we do?" she asked when we were in the elevator. "Nothing. We wait until tomorrow and unveil what's happening," I said as the doors opened. We came out of the building and I looked up. I went inside and went up that elevator. It was more rickety and unstable than the other, but it worked. We got up to the 10th floor and got off. We walked around, but then I saw a room with a number 101 on the front. I pushed open the door and the place was messy. There were blueprints everywhere and left-out restaurant food everywhere as well. I thought that someone must have been very hard at work here, but something caught my eye. I walked to the window and I pulled away the curtain to reveal a crack in it. I placed my fist in it, and it was a little bigger than my fist. I placed my hand on it, and suddenly I had a quick flash of someplace dark with someone on a phone by the window. They walked away from the window, but turned back and punched it. They yelled in anger as they kicked the couch, but as I looked into their faces, it was mine. I didn't know what to say or do, but I knew at that moment that somehow our worlds were connected. This episode was recorded by Tristan Kumar. If you enjoyed this, make sure to check the next one. And this is the beginning of the second book, Dying Planet, the Prison of the Survivors. And this will cover the next 2 acts in this trilogy. If you enjoyed this, check out the next one. Thank you for listening.